is, or this armed opposition is. Again, I'm speaking from a Kandahar perspective. I live in Kandahar. I can't really speak to the Fatah Northwest Frontier Province crowd or the Kunar crowd. I think there has been a shift in the last year of from something that I would have described as an invasion of Afghanistan by proxy by the basically security institution of Pakistan using Afghans as proxies. There's been a shift in the last year largely due to disaffection with the government, the rising level of frustration at the governance issues that have been raised and will be discussed later is to the breaking point. I mean, people are being brutalized by their government, shaken down by their government, to the point that you have people saying the Taliban prey on us at night and the government preys on us at the daytime. In the daytime, what are we supposed to do? Basically, people feeling caught between, in the crossfire, between two hostile blocs. And there's a certain degree of almost blood feud that's been created by civilian casualties. So I would say that starting in last spring of 2006, when there was really an offensive operation by the Taliban on Kandahar, just to the west of town. At the beginning, I would say about 10% of the people in the field fighting, the armed opponents in the field, were local. That means that others, I'm not saying others were foreigners, but I'm saying that they were from other provinces usually, and you could tell by their accents and even sometimes the way they dress. By the end of the year, the percentage had slipped of locals involved, had slipped to about 30–35%. And that was largely because of the ISAF response was very slow because ISAF was busy in other provinces and things like that. So the Canadian forces simply didn't have the resources to respond early enough that they could do an operation that was not too kinetic. The operation that took place, that was called Medusa last fall, was extremely kinetic and produced a lot of civilian casualties and damage to property. And that also was kind of interesting to watch, the slippage in public opinion about civilian casualties. There was a major civilian casualty incident in the beginning of the spring when all of this kicked off. People from my cooperative happened to go to the hospital the next morning. We didn't know about this, but they went to the hospital, and the hospital was just overflowing with wounded people. And interestingly, my cooperative members came back spitting mad. They said, these people, they tell us to stay away from the government, they complain about the government, and then when they get injured, where do they come but to the government hospital? There was absolutely no sympathy or very little sympathy in Kandahar for civilians injured in this battle, which had been recognized as a case of hot pursuit. There's a difference between understanding a specific mistake or exaggeration in the use of force and air power becoming a sort of stay away from the government, they complain about the government, and then when they get injured, where do they come but to the government hospital? There was absolutely no sympathy or very little sympathy in Kandahar for civilians injured in this battle, which had been recognized as a case of hot pursuit. There's a difference between understanding a specific mistake or I think Afghan face is a term that we all ought to drop from our vocabulary because I think it's really insulting. As General Eikenberry recently said, if we want an Afghan anything, we want Afghan mind and body, not face. But the other point that I'd like to make is that Afghan population is struggling under a government that was imposed on them by the international community. And if we don't get our heads around that, we are really misunderstanding what's going on. And it's not fair to say, okay, largely the United States government, but not really changed by the international presence currently there. We impose guys in positions of power, President Karzai was elected, but every government official that ordinary Afghans interact with was appointed. They don't have any impact on the choice of those individuals. Those individuals have been financed and armed by the international community, and it's not fair for us to say, okay, now it's up to the Afghan population to discipline them and rein them in. And so again, what I hear from the Afghan people that I live amongst in the South is that you guys, you internationals, have got to run interference for us, and you have got to start bringing some of these officials that you brought to power to task. Thank you.
Aziz.